Greenfield Estates looked like the kind of place you'd dream about. Gated community. Perfect lawns. Neighbors who waved but never really talked. To outsiders, it was safe. But for Monica Samuels, it was a bubble filled with quiet suspicion. She and her husband Derrick were one of the only black families in the neighborhood. And though no one said it aloud, Monica felt it, the stares, the unspoken judgment, the constant reminder that she didn't quite belong. That's why when two men approached her in uniforms one late afternoon, she didn't panic. Not at first. The men wore shirts with stitched badges and dark belts. At a glance, they looked official enough. "Ma'am," the taller one barked, "you're violating HOA policy. Your vehicle isn't authorized here." Monica blinked, shifting the groceries in her arms. She was in her own driveway. "I live here," she replied cautiously. The man smirked, glancing at his partner. "That's funny. We haven't seen you at the HOA meetings." There was a cruel tone under his words, the kind Monica had learned to recognize. Still, she tried to stay calm. "I'll call the HOA president if there's a problem." But before she could reach her phone, the shorter one stepped forward. His hand clamped down on her wrist. His grip was strong, too strong for someone checking parking rules. "You don't make the calls," he said, voice low and menacing. Neighbors had begun to peek out of their homes. A few stood on porches, watching with wide eyes. But no one moved closer. Monica's heart raced. She pulled back, shouting, "Let me go." And then, the blow came. A sharp crack across her face. The grocery bag split, cans and apples spilling across the driveway. Gasps rose from the small crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." But not a single person intervened. The man who hit her sneered, as if daring anyone to challenge him. "You people never learn." 2 blocks away, Derrick Samuels was in the backyard, sanding down a piece of wood for the fence. A retired Navy SEAL, he carried himself with quiet discipline. Most of the neighbors knew him as just another homeowner, not the man who had seen combat, stared death in the face, and lived to tell it. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then rang. The frantic voice of his neighbor tore through the line. "Derrick, you need to get here now. Monica's in trouble. They hit her. It's bad." Derrick's blood ran cold. The world seemed to narrow into a tunnel. Without a word, he dropped his tools, vaulted over the fence like it was nothing, and ran. When Derrick reached the driveway, what he saw nearly tore him apart. Monica was crouched on the ground, clutching her cheek. The 2 fake HOA cops stood over her like predators who believed they owned the night. The crowd that had gathered parted as Derrick stormed in. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "What did you do?" The taller man smirked, trying to mask his unease. "Sir, stay back. This is HOA security business. HOA doesn't hire cowards who hit women." Derrick shot back, stepping closer. His tone was flat, steady, the voice of a man who had been in too many battles to be rattled by imposters. The shorter man puffed his chest. "Touch us, and you'll regret it." But regret was about to become their reality. One of them reached to shove Derrick. Big mistake. In one smooth motion, Derrick caught his wrist, twisted, and drove him to the ground with such force the pavement cracked beneath him. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The second man lunged with a wild swing. Derrick ducked, delivered a gut punch that knocked the wind from him, then followed with a sharp elbow to the jaw. The man collapsed, writhing on the concrete. The crowd, frozen until now, suddenly found their voices. Some shouted in shock, others cheered, and Monica, through her pain, stood taller. She looked at her husband with tears in her eyes, knowing she wasn't alone anymore. The imposters groaned on the ground, stripped of their fake authority. Derrick stood above them, his presence commanding. "You thought you could scare her because she was alone," he said, his voice carrying. "You thought no one would fight back. You were wrong." Neighbors began shouting the truth. "They hit her first. They're not real security. Call the real cops." For once, silence wasn't protecting the guilty. The crowd had flipped. But justice isn't simple. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Relief washed over Monica, until she saw the look on one imposter's face. The taller man, blood trickling from his split lip, leaned close enough for Derrick to hear. His voice was low, smug. "You think this is over? You don't know who we work for." Those words chilled Derrick more than the fight itself. This wasn't random. This was something bigger. The real police finally arrived, handcuffing the imposters as witnesses poured out what they saw. For a moment, it looked like justice. But Derrick couldn't shake the smirk on that man's face, or his warning. That night, Monica sat at the kitchen table with an ice pack pressed to her cheek. Derrick paced, unable to sit still. Who were they really? Monica whispered. And why us? Derrick stopped in his tracks. He thought about his military past, the enemies he'd made, the people who'd wanted him silenced before. Could this be connected? Or was it something darker tied to the neighborhood itself? One thing was certain, this wasn't over. Because if men were willing to assault his wife in broad daylight, with neighbors watching, then whatever power stood behind them was far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Derrick clenched his fists. Next time, they wouldn't just be coming for Monica. They'd be coming for all of them. And when they did, he'd be ready. Remember, Derrick Samuels, a retired Navy SEAL, defended his wife Monica after two men impersonating HOA security attacked her in broad daylight. He fought them off, exposing their lies in front of neighbors. But just as police hauled the imposters away, one of them smirked through a bloody lip and whispered chilling words. "You don't know who we work for." That wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. The whisper that wouldn't go away. That night, Monica couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the house made her flinch. Meanwhile, Derrick replayed the fight in his head. The uniforms, the badges, the way they carried themselves, something about it felt too deliberate, too organized. The next morning, he called the precinct, demanding updates. But the officer on the phone was vague. Too vague. "They've been transferred," the officer muttered. "Cases under review." "Transferred where?" Derrick pressed. But the line went dead. Later that afternoon, Monica checked their mailbox. Inside was a plain envelope, no return address. She opened it, her hands trembling. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Derrick, standing in his front yard. Taken from across the street. On the back, scrawled in messy handwriting, were 3 words. "Stay in line." Monica dropped the photo, her heart racing. Derrick picked it up, his jaw tightening. This wasn't random harassment anymore. Someone was watching them, and they weren't hiding it. Digging into the truth, Derrick's instincts from his SEAL days kicked in. He started researching, pulling every thread he could. Within hours, he found something disturbing. The HOA board president, Harold Klein, wasn't just a cranky retiree who enforced lawn codes. He was tied to a private security company that had been investigated years ago for intimidation tactics, harassment, even disappearances. And those uniforms. They matched an old logo from Klein's company. Derrick realized the truth. The fake HOA cops weren't acting alone. They were part of something much bigger. That night, as Monica prepared dinner, Derrick heard something at the back door. A faint scrape. A whisper. Then, silence. He grabbed the bat by the fridge and moved toward the sound. The door handle twitched. Then, crash. The back door burst open. A masked man stormed inside. Monica screamed. Derrick swung the bat, connecting hard with the intruder's arm. The man dropped a taser and stumbled, but before Derrick could strike again, the intruder bolted out into the night. Derrick chased him to the yard, but the man dove into a black SUV that sped off without headlights. The SUV's license plate. Covered. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. The next morning, Derrick went to the police with everything: the photo, the attack, the SUV. But instead of concern, he was met with silence. Finally, a detective leaned in and whispered, "You didn't hear this from me, but this case is above our pay grade. The men who attacked your wife. They were released within hours. Someone high up signed off. Someone wants this buried." Derrick's stomach turned. The justice system wasn't just failing them, it was protecting the attackers. And then came the biggest revelation. The detective slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a copy of an incident report. The names of the 2 arrested imposters were blacked out. But beneath the black ink, faintly visible, was a stamp. Federal asset, do not detain. Back home, Derrick shared the news with Monica. Her face went pale. Federal assets. What does that even mean? She whispered. Derrick knew all too well. It meant these weren't just thugs. They were part of a network, trained, funded, and protected by powerful people. But why target them? Why Monica? That's when Monica remembered something chilling. A week before the attack, she'd spoken up at an HOA meeting. She'd called out Harold Klein for pushing policies that unfairly targeted minority homeowners, Parking restrictions, petty fines, surveillance cameras aimed at specific houses. She had embarrassed him. And now, Derrick realized, Harold wasn't just using law rules to control the neighborhood. He was using federal muscle to enforce them. That night, Derrick installed cameras around their house, determined to catch whoever came next. At 3 a.m., the motion sensor pinged. Derrick checked the feed, and froze. A figure stood at the edge of the driveway. Not moving, not speaking, just staring at the camera. When Derrick zoomed in, he saw the man holding something. A manila folder. Inside it, Derrick later discovered, were documents. Records of his military service. Classified missions. Photos from overseas deployments, some he'd never even seen before. Someone had access to government files. And they wanted him to know it. The following day, Derrick confronted Harold Klein at his office. You sent them, Derrick accused. You had them attack Monica. Klein didn't flinch. He simply smiled. Careful, Mr. Samuels. This is a quiet neighborhood. We don't like troublemakers. Derrick slammed the photo from the mailbox onto Klein's desk. Then explain this. Klein leaned back, his eyes cold. You think you know who's in charge. But you don't. And if you keep pushing, you'll find out the hard way. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. That evening, as Derrick reviewed the folder again, Monica screamed from the living room. On the TV, the evening news was running a story. 2 men had been found dead in a motel outside the city. Their bodies were badly beaten, their IDs missing. The anchor announced their names. It was them, the same 2 imposters Derrick had knocked out days earlier. Monica gasped. But, they were supposed to be in custody. Derrick's blood went cold. Who killed them? Why? And if they were silenced, what did they know that was worth killing for? The screen flickered. Then, for a brief second, the live news feed glitched. A strange symbol appeared, a circle with a line through it. Derrick recognized it instantly. It was the insignia of a covert unit he'd crossed paths with years ago overseas. Someone was sending him a message. And this time, it wasn't just about Monica. It was about him. The imposters are dead. The HOA president is untouchable. And Derrick's past is being used against him. Who killed the fake cops? What's the real connection between Harold Klein and federal assets? And why is Derrick being dragged back into a shadow war he thought he left behind? One thing's for sure, the Samuels family is caught in something far more dangerous than neighborhood politics. If you want part 2, where Derrick uncovers the terrifying truth behind the HOA conspiracy, hit like, drop a comment with your theories, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Because what happens next will change everything.